I see a quorum. I must inform members that the clerk of the committee can only receive motions for the election of the chair. Le greffier ne peut recevoir aucune autre motion. Il ne peut entendre des rappels au règlement ni participer au débat. We can to the election of the chair. Pursuant to Standing Order 1062, the chair must be a member of the government party. I am ready to receive motions for the chair.
I would like to move that Bob Britannia be the chair of the committee.
It has been moved by Jaime Batiste that Bob Batrina be elected chair of the committee. Are there any further motions for the election of chair? It has been moved by Jaime Batiste that Bob Batrina be elected as chair of the committee. Pursuant to the House Order of Wednesday, September 23rd, I will now proceed to a recorded division. Mr. Anandasangari.
In favor.
Mr. Batiste.
In favor.
Mr. Bertina.
In favor.
Mr. Pulowski. Mr. Pulowski.
Were you saying something to me?
We are voting on a motion to elect Mr. Bertina as chair.
I vote for Bob Bertina as chair.
Mr. Vancouverden.
Vote in favor.
Ms. Zan.
In favor.
Ms. McLeod.
Support.
Mr. Melillo.
In favor.
Mr. Vidal.
In favor.
Mr. Viersen.
In favor.
Madame Berube.
En favor.
Ms. Blaney.
In favor.
I declare the motion carried and Bob Bertina duly elected chair of the committee. I invite Bob Bertina to take the chair.
Thank you very much, everyone. Thanks to the previous group of members. We had quite a remarkable, although truncated session. And I was really pleased with how we got along, and I'm encouraged by the new members who are joining us now. And thank you very much for showing your willingness to participate in what we think is a very vital committee with important work to do. My next order of business, and wait till I get my act together here, is to hear nominations for the first vice chair of the committee. And the nomination will be by the Conservatives.
I nominate Kathy McLeod.
It has been moved by Mr. Vidal that Kathy McLeod be elected first vice chair of the committee. Are there any further motions for first vice chair?
You need a second for that? I'll second that motion.
It has been moved by Mr. Vidal that Kathy McLeod be elected first vice chair of the committee. Conformément à l'ordre de la Chambre du mercredi le 23 septembre 2000.
Pursuant to the House Order of Wednesday, September 23rd, I will now proceed to a recorded division. Mr. Chair, someone was supposed to put forward my name as well.
Ça serait pour le deuxième vice.
This will be for the second vice president. We are doing the first right now.
Donc, motion for the election of first vice chair, Mr. Anandasangari.
In favor.
Mr. Batiste. Mr. Batiste. I believe you are
In
mute.
favor.
Thank you. Mr. Bertina is chair and does not vote. Mr. Pulaski,
In favor.
Mr. Vancouverden, Mr. Vancouverden,
In favor.
Ms. Zan,
In favor.
Ms. McLeod,
In favor.
Mr. Melillo,
In favor?
Mr. Vidal,
In favor.
Mr. Fearson,
In favor.
Madame Berube,
En favor.
Ms. Blaney,
In favor.
I declare the motion carried and Kathy McLeod duly elected first vice chair of the committee.
Thank you. Welcome, Kathy. Next, we have the election, and we require a nomination for second vice chair, member of the block. Gary INAN Sangari.
Monsieur Président, je voudrais
Mr. Chair, I'd like to propose Sylvie Berube as the second vice chair of our committee.
For second vice chair, Madame Berube.
Conformément à l'article
Pursuant to House Order of this person has to be from a party that's not from the official, not from the official opposition. It is moved that Ms. Berube be the chair, the second vice chair. Are there any other motions?
it has been moved that Sylvie Berube be elected as second vice chair of the committee. Pursuant to the House Order, I will now, of Wednesday, September 23rd, 2020, I will now proceed to a recorded division. Mr. Hernandez Sangari,
in favor. En favor.
Mr. Batiste,
In favor.
Mr. Bertina. Does not vote as he's chair. Mr. Pulaski,
In favor.
Mr. Vancouverden,
Je vote en faveur.
Ms. Zan,
In favor.
Ms. McLeod,
In favor.
Mr. Melillo,
In favor?
Mr. Vidal,
In favor.
Mr. Fearson,
Favor.
Mr. Fearson, I'm just going to ask you to repeat again.
In favor.
Thank you. Madame Berube,
En favor.
Ms. Blaney,
In favor.
je déclare la motion adoptée.
The motion has been approved. Ms. Berube is now the second vice chair of the committee.
Thank you very much, and welcome again, Madame Berube. I've had a request for a further nomination for a third vice chair, and I'll ask Mr. Vancouverden to make that nomination.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I would like to nominate Ms. Mumalak Kakak as third vice chair. My motion.
So quick
If I may interrupt for
point
one
of-
moment, I would just like to confer with the chair one moment, if we could suspend briefly.
And I did have a quick point of order. Perhaps this could be part of the conferring. I don't object, but I wonder if there is issues with standing orders and in terms of whether this can, if there's any standing orders, et cetera, that need changing in terms of proceeding. Thank you.
Mr. Clerk?
Sure, one moment. My advice to the committee at this time would be that this would be something that could be done at any other time, but that I would need to come back to the committee after doing some research as to whether or not that could be done in a formal way. As Ms. McLeod points out, the standing orders stipulate a number of vice chair positions for committees, and to my knowledge, Proc did not report back to the House on that.
Mr. Clerk, we've had some discussion leading up to this, and I'll ask Mr. Ananda Sangari to reflect on what we determined. Gary?
Yeah, Mr. Clerk, I think the understanding I have is that the committee is able to establish third vice chairs if it so pleases. The challenge, I think, is Board of Internal Board of Internal Economy does not have the proper resources to offer a stipend to the third vice chair. So that is the understanding that I have. Ms. Blaney, I'm not sure, I think you may have faced this in other areas, and as a whip with the NDP, I don't know if you're able to weigh in on this, but our understanding is that what we're doing is completely within our purview, and the only issue here is, I think, the stipend that is often offered to the first and second vice chairs.
Ms. Blaney?
All I can add to this conversation, first of all, this is unexpected. I didn't expect this conversation. So it is one that happened in Proc, and of course, due to prorogation, that was not able to move forward. So I don't have any answers about the Board of Internal Economies, and I do agree that, you know, one of the biggest concerns that, of course, we had was not about the stipend, but about the reality that vice chairs and chairs are often sent information from stakeholder groups, and because one of the parties is not recognized as a vice chair, they often are not attached in those information exchanges. So that is all I can add to the conversation. It is something, of course, that we continue, and of course, I can't answer what the committee can do. That is really at the discretion of the committee. But I, of course, would be happy to support it.
And from a presidential point of view, you know, in the last committee, we did have a third vice chair, and that was something that we had agreed to as well.
Okay, if I may, I had a very good conversation with Ms. Kakak just yesterday, as a matter of fact. And I wanted to assure her that we were quite willing to accommodate a third vice chair, but unfortunately the question of the stipend is completely out of our hands. But what I think we wanted to reassure Ms. Kakak was that she would have full participation in the committee work, and as Ms. Blaney suggested, you know, receiving information that might otherwise not come without the chair being present. So, Ms. McLeod, do you have anything further that concerns you about this from this discussion?
I certainly appreciate the comments made by my NDP colleague in terms of the importance of receiving information. I mean, to have the advice of the clerk who wanted to do a little bit more research, you know, I would like to see this happen in terms of having a recognition that she receives the appropriate information. But I also don't think it's appropriate in this case to violate potential standing orders. So can we just leave it perhaps to the next meeting, by which time I would presume we would have a definitive answer, and then I'd certainly be, you know, if there's no changes that need to be made, I'd be very happy. If it's up to the committee to support, I'd be very happy to vote at that time.
Yeah,
Gary,
agreed, Mr. Chair.
You agree with that?
Yes.
Okay, so what we'll do then is have the clerk delve into this further. We did some preliminary examination and felt that we were on safe ground. But if there's any further assurance that's required, I don't think waiting for one meeting will impact negatively on the business of the committee. So with the committee's permission, I'll ask, as the chair, the clerk to confirm the situation regarding the election of a third vice chair. Is that okay, Mr. Clerk?
Yep, I'll do so.
Thank you very much. So at that, I believe Mr. INAN Sangari, we need to get the routine motions, the business of that out of the way. Are you prepared to move that?
Yes, I am, Mr. Chair, and if you'll permit me, I'll read the routine motions from the beginning.
Please do. Yeah.
So this is the same as the one we adopted previously, and it starts that the committee retain as needed and at the discretion of the chair the services of one or more analysts from the Library of Parliament to assist in its work. That the subcommittee on agenda and procedure be established and be composed of 5 members, the chair, 1 member from each party, and that the subcommittee work in the spirit of collaboration. And I'd like to just add, it should be from each recognized party. That the chair be authorized to hold meetings to receive evidence and to have the evidence printed when a quorum is not present, provided that at least 4 members are present, including 1 member of the opposition and 1 member of the government. But when traveling outside the parliamentary precinct, that the meeting begin after 15 minutes, regardless of members present.
Excuse me, sorry to interrupt. Point of order, I'm not sure, but Mr. Chair, if you could just advise me, there's some changes I would like to make to the routine motions. And I'm wondering, would you like me to put forward amendments during or after?
Let's let Mr. INAN Sangari go through the list, and then we'll come back to that.
Yeah, amendments would be moved after the motion's been moved.
Right. Thanks, Clerk. Go ahead, Gary.
That witnesses be given 10 minutes for their opening statement, that at the discretion of the chair during the questioning of witnesses, there be allocated 6 minutes for the first questioner of each party as follows for the first round: Conservative Party, Liberal Party, Bloc Québécois, New Democratic Party, and that for the second and subsequent rounds, the order and time for the questioning be as follows: Conservative Party, 5 minutes, Liberal Party, 5 minutes, Conservative Party, 5 minutes, Liberal Party, 5 minutes, Bloc Québécois, 2.5 minutes, and the New Democratic Party, 2.5 minutes. That the clerk of the committee be authorized to distribute documents to members of the committee only when the documents are available in both official languages, and that the witnesses be advised accordingly. That the clerk of the committee be authorized to make the necessary arrangements to provide working meals for the committee and its subcommittee. That if requested, reasonable travel accommodation and living expenses be reimbursed to witnesses, not exceeding 2 representatives per organization, provided that in exceptional circumstances, payment for more representatives may be made at the discretion of the chair. That unless otherwise ordered, each committee member be allowed to have 1 staff member at an in-camera meeting, and that 1 additional person from each House officer's house be allowed to be present. That 1 copy of the transcript of each in-camera meeting be kept in the committee clerk's office for consultations by members of the committee or by their staff. That a 48 hours notice interpreted as 2 nights shall be required for any substantive motion to be considered by the committee, unless the substantive motion relates directly to business that under consideration, provided that 1, the notice be filed with the clerk of the committee no later than 4 p.m. from Monday to Friday. That 2, the motion be distributed to members in both official languages by the clerk on the same day the said notice was transmitted, if it was received no later than the deadline hour. And 3, notices received after the deadline hour or on non-business days be deemed to have been received during the next business day, and that when the committee is traveling on official business, no substantive motions may be moved. That in relation to orders of reference from those from the House respecting bills, A, the clerk of the committee shall, upon the committee receiving such an order of reference, write to each member who is not a member of a caucus represented on the committee to invite those members to file with the clerk of the committee in both official languages any amendments to the bill, which is the subject of the said order, which they would suggest that the committee consider be suggested amendments filed pursuant to paragraph A, at least 48 hours prior to the start of the clause-by-clause consideration of the bill to which the amendments relate shall be deemed to be proposed during the said consideration, provided that the committee may, by motion, vary the deadline in respect of a given bill, and C, during the clause-by-clause consideration of a bill, the chair shall allow a member who filed suggested amendments pursuant to paragraph A an opportunity to make brief representation in support of them.
So those are the suite of routine motions. And Ms. Blaney, would you like to go ahead with your comments or amendments?
Absolutely. So thank you, everyone. And it's wonderful to be here with all of you today. I was on INAN for a couple of years with some of the members that are here today, so it's always good to be back. So I just have a couple of recommendations, of course, on the decisions that PROC made. And as the Mother Committee, I think it's important for us to have those discussions and reflect what that committee is doing. So the first part was in, I believe, section 3, meeting without a quorum. One of the changes is you can see that it says one member of the government and one member of the opposition. Because we have a couple of opposition parties, we thought it would be more appropriate to have 2 government members and 2 opposition members. So that is one amendment that I am putting forward. I don't know if you would like me to put forward all of the amendments at once, or okay, I will do that if everyone's all right with that.
Yeah, sure, go ahead.
Okay, the second amendment.
Chair,
I'm sorry, go, yeah. Point of order if you're going to interrupt, okay?
Point of order. Do you have the sort of original document to recirculate? I'm in our digital binder and it's not there. It just helps when we're referencing sections that you have something to read as we go through them. So if they could be circulated, that would be helpful, but I see it's not in the digital binder.
I can recirculate the routine motions from the previous session now, which I understand are identical to the motion just moved by Mr. Anandasangri.
Okay.
Yes, they were according to what I read. The second part is around section, I believe, 4, time for opening remarks and questioning of witnesses. So I'm proposing 2 amendments. One is to take the time that we're allowing people to present from 10 minutes to 5. This is what PROC did to make sure that people were very clear in their discussion and it would leave more time for questioning. And the second amendment is for the second round of questioning, which is currently Conservative 5, Liberal 5, Conservative 5, Liberal 5. Our recommendation and what PROC has done and several other committees as well is change that to Conservative 5, Liberal 5, Bloc 2.5, NDP 2.5, Conservative 5, and Liberal 5. So those are the 3 amendments.
Okay, comments. Looking around the table, Gary, does anything stand out for you?
Just a quick question. Is this different than what Ms. Kakak sent out in terms of notice of motion? Is it slightly different? Because I think
they are all the same. The only one that is different is the 10 minutes. She recommended keeping the 10 minutes, which I think is a discussion for the committee to have, and I'm open to that. I just thought it was important to also reflect what PROC has done, and I know some committees have moved it down to 7.5 minutes. I can't answer what committee off the top of my head, so I think that's an important discussion for the committee.
We're in agreement in terms of the proposed amendment as brought forward by Ms. Blaney today.
Any further comment?
So Kathy, we certainly agree with the later 2 amendments. My only question being is, certainly I know within this committee, when I've been on it in the past, the cutting off of witnesses is, sometimes very sensitive. And so do we want to consider 7 versus 5? or do we just allow the chair some flexibility depending on the circumstances? So Chair, I would look to your comments on that issue and
Yes.
and other committee members.
Well, and they're good comments, and it actually came up on occasion where I was criticized for not sticking to the time, but it was almost impossible to interrupt. This is not Mike Pence just dragging on the debate. This is substantive material that you just couldn't interrupt. But I would say, in terms of the 10 versus 5 minutes of opening, that sometimes it does drag on a bit. Points are repeated. I think that really, if you're coming before committee, there should be a concise presentation, because what I would say to all of our witnesses is that things that you may have wished to bring forward in your opening remarks may well come in within the questioning subsequently. So I'm okay. Adam, you'd like to add to that? Go ahead. And then Marcus.
Sorry, my space bar wasn't working. It's not a point of order. It's just a suggestion. Why not? I don't know if this has ever been done in another committee before, but by saying 5 to 7 minutes, you're sort of encouraging 5, but saying 7 is okay. Perhaps at 5.5 minutes, you give a 90-second warning so that it's not an abrupt cutoff, because sometimes it was like, time's up, you're done, sorry, no more. But with 90 seconds, people can then choose to.
Yeah.
And saying between 5 and 7 minutes, we can lightly say that 5 is requested, but 7 is allowed.
I don't know how you make a 5 to 7 minutes as a process point. I think it's in terms of the abrupt cutoffs that were made. I remember very well. These were occasions when people had gone somewhat beyond 10 minutes. And it was really hurting the questioning process, because we have budgeted time for everybody. And so if the presenter, the witness is going on and on and on, it impacts on the actual conducting of the business within. So we'll come back to it in a moment. I prefer 5 minutes. I think you can say a lot in 5 minutes with the remarks that I added to that. Marcus Pawlowski, you had your hand up.
Yeah, I had my hand up before some of the earlier remarks were made, so maybe I'm duplicating things, but this came up in HISA, which I'm also a member of. And actually, with respect to Ms. Blaney moving it, interestingly enough, Don Davies on the NDP disagreed with that somewhat as well, and saying that, and I agree with him, it's not a hill I want to die on, but in some cases, 5 minutes may not be enough for a difficult subject. And in questioning, you only get 6 minutes for questions and answers, and there might be some concepts that it takes more than 5 minutes to explain and do a thorough job on. The second thing I'd like to point out is my predecessor, Don Rusnak, who was on this committee, said, apparently got quite upset with the fact that there were elders on the committee who came before the committee to give testimony and were cut off early, and this was a sign of disrespect. So I think for those reasons, in HISA, we made it 5 to 10 minutes at the discretion of the chair, which seemed, because what we wanted with the 5 minutes was to get in all the questions and not be cut off early. But I would think there may be times when you may want to give them more than 5 minutes. But anyhow, I'm not willing to die on this. I don't mind one way or the other.
So maybe just to conclude, all of the presenters, the witnesses, are required to give us a preview. I'll get to you, Gary. I'm sorry. Preview of their remarks, so we should have the text of everything that they wish to say. Sometimes there's a cultural issue where someone's traveled a long way from, let's say, the high Arctic, and now they're suddenly they're in Ottawa presenting to a committee, and I think they would feel that we're going to be here for the duration, and I want you to hear everything I have to say, and it doesn't mesh with how we structure our committees. So that could be a problem as well. The thing I would say to all witnesses is what I just said, that everything that you wish to present is in the hands of the committee. And so if you don't get to it, rest assured that we will have the information and that it may come up as well in questioning. I'm sorry, Gary, did you want to weigh in? Gary Vidal?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I had my hand up. I just wanted to make sure that I got your attention that way.
Yeah.
Couple things I would suggest here. My experience in our prior year here was that there seemed to be some confusion in the minds of the witnesses how much time they had. We started with 10 minutes, and then at some of our meetings, we had actually limited the presentation time to 5 minutes in order to, and I'm not sure that was well communicated to the witnesses. They prepared 10 minutes of remarks, and then we were cutting them off at 5 minutes or whatever. So I think whichever way we go, we need to make sure that that is clearly communicated to the witnesses so that they know what time frame they're working with. To your comment about the witness providing us their remarks in writing, that happened at times, but it sure wasn't consistent, Mr. Chair. So I think, again, if that's the expectation, we need to make sure that those people have that communicated to them very clearly, that, you know, their remarks are expected to be in our hands. Final comment, I think the 5 minutes for some of the witnesses that we had at our committee is very limiting. I think that 5 minutes is a really short time for some of these people that come a long ways and have very important things to say. Personally, I would be in favor of the 10 still, but I could compromise at the 7, you know, at 7.5 or something like that, and be happy with that. Again, it's not a hill to die on, but I think there's a respect factor for the witnesses that we had at our committee that had some very good things to say.
Any further comments?
I just wanted to add that I'm open to 7.5 if somebody wants to propose that. But it also, just a reminder that the discretion of the chair is still in that motion. So I believe if somebody comes from far away, if it's our witness, I think it's beholden to all of us as MPs to say, I believe this witness will need more time, and do some work with the chair to make sure, especially if we want to be respectful of cultural practices.
Okay.
So that's my final statement on this.
Kathy, your blue hand is up. Have you made your remarks to that hand, or is this a new hand? Okay, Gary.
Made the remarks, thanks.
Okay.
Perhaps we could, you know, what I would suggest is we land on maybe 6 minutes with discretion to the chair. You know, for example, sometimes we have panels of 3, and each one will, if they get 10 minutes, then obviously we really shorten the question rounds. So I think depending on the panel, depending on how many people, depending on other circumstances that as chair you may feel appropriate, we give you that flexibility. But let's say as a baseline, 6 minutes. I think it may be hard for us to impose a pre-written submission rule, just because sometimes we only reach out to our witnesses a day or 2 ahead of time. So maybe just, you know, encourage witnesses to submit written documents, but for the most part, just you know, keep it as is with the 6 minute with some flexibility for others.
Marcus, your hand is still up. Did you make the remarks you wished?
Yeah, no, consider my hand down, sorry.
Okay. So what do you say then? We go with a soft 6 minutes. I mean, you can't put that in a procedure paper, but on the understanding that we're not going to jump on anybody once the 6 minutes is passed. However, everyone needs to consider the functioning of the committee includes the round of questioning. And we're all happy to, I think most of us, extend meetings if that needs to be the case. But my experience over the years chairing things is concise, well functioning meetings are the most effective. And honest, I can remember doing meetings as the mayor or as a councillor in Hamilton that went like for hours and nothing of substance came out of those meetings. Probably more a reflection of us as councillors. But you see, I hope you see what I mean, that if we can follow the rules as closely as possible with consideration, and the courtesy that we need to extend to our guests. I think if we're all in agreement, we should land in the right place. So, so Gary, would you move a 6-minute presentation time?
Yes, yes, Mr. Chair.
Do we have any comments on that? In view of what's been said, Eric, did you have your hand up? Okay. So let's just place our hand up like that. Are we all good to go with 6 minutes with consideration? And Mr. Clerk, I believe that motion is passed based on my view of the grid.
Yeah, I see no disagreement. So we can consider that a sub amendment that's been adopted, and we can move back to Ms. Blaney's amendments to the routine motions.
Yeah, Ms. Blaney, are anything further on the routine motions?
No, I proposed all three, and of course the one friendly sub amendment I'm happy to support, and hopefully we can get this last vote done for the remainder and move on.
Okay, so motions of studies, hands up, and Mr. Anandasangari, Mrs. Ann, Mr. Beer. Okay, I think I got an order, and it starts with Mr. Anandasangari.
Mr. Chair, I think we have to vote on an amendment and on a main motion.
I'm sorry,
yeah.
we need to take a formal vote, Mr. Clerk?
For clarification, we are currently on the amendment of Ms. Blaney to the routine motions moved by Mr. Anandasangari. Any member can request a recorded vote, but if the committee,
I am not requesting a recorded vote.
Yeah, if the committee chooses to adopt it unanimously, then we can proceed back to the routine motions having.
Okay, so as the speaker would say in the House, due to the nature of the current technology, I will only hear from those who are against unanimous consideration, and I see no, so Mr. Clerk will assume that that is a unanimous approval of that, and now we're going to I'm sorry, Kathy.
Sorry, point of order. And of course, I know that members on this committee did a lot of virtual meetings, whereas some other committees didn't. But in terms of sort of, it's a different situation to get the eye of the chair in terms of, so how do you create a reasonable process in terms of the recognition? Because, you know, certainly of order. So we have many motions that have been presented. And so how do you, from my understanding, manage the order of people that are going to choose to speak to different issues? And then I think, you know, should we have a more general discussion first before we get into any specific motions that are on the table?
Well, I think the point is that the chair is in charge of the speaking order. And I have two possibilities. One is the grid where I see hands. Then there's the blue hand, the raise hand function. And there are two raise hand functions, now a third. And but Mr. Anandasangari, when I thought that we were done with the previous thing, which we were routine motions.
Yeah, sorry, Chair. We weren't done though. We weren't done, so of course we weren't putting our hands up to catch your eye. So I guess I just wanted to have that conversation.
Yeah, that's fine. Really, it's the chair's prerogative on the speaking order, and as I said, so I will either see, preferably, blue hands will go up on my screen here. I also acknowledge raised hands. And I guess we'll have to see how it goes. And typically what would happen is I'll ask the clerk to comment in just a moment. Someone might get upset that they've been waving away over in the corner and I never got to them, and that's fair. I mean, chairs can make mistakes as well. Mr. Clerk, do you have a comment with regard to this conversation?
just to say that I'm also happy to provide support in terms of maintaining a speaking list and noting who has raised their hand in what order. And I'm happy to speak with you about that and how you'd like to coordinate that as chair going forward.
Now, thank you very much, because Kathy, in this committee's experience when we were doing it live in Ottawa, the previous clerk did exactly what our clerk is saying. And I would look over and I would see on her list, which usually would check with mine, because sometimes when the topic gets hot and heavy, you might start to concentrate on a speaking point and miss the other point, because the chair, the first issue, and I think meetings that have decorum are because they're well chaired. And the reason they're well chaired is the chair does the simple thing, keeps the speaking order, and allows people to speak within the context of what's before us. So if I'm not sure whether we'll ever be back again in the live format. I'm sure, I hope we will, but perhaps even in this format, the clerk will also assist me, and we can do that with a speakers list that appears in text on my screen as well. So having said all of that, can we move on now to studies and motions?
The current matter of business is the routine motions as amended.
The routines motions as amended are, as the speaker will say in the House, for unanimous consent, I will only hear whether someone is opposed to the to unanimous consent. Are there any opposed to unanimous consent? And I see none, so I'll accept that as the motion as amended has been passed. Mr. Anasangri, Mr. Batiste, Mr. Pulowski, Mr. Viersen, Ms. McLeod. Ms. Zan, I'm sorry, you actually were before Mr. Pulowski, but not with a blue hand. So I'll put you in as Batiste, Zan, Pulowski, Viersen, McLeod, and Mr. Anasangri. Will you go ahead, please?
Wait, Mr. Speaker, Mr. Chair, I'm so sorry. Can I make a point of order?
Point of order, sure.
I don't find a blue hand. I had my hand up for some time now.
Yeah, I saw your hand, and then I got distracted and go into the blue hands. Look
Where
on
are the blue hands?
On the participants. There's a thing with two heads on the bottom of your screen. It says participants.
Right.
Now click the arrow of that.
Okay. Oh, I see. And then there's other hands in there.
Yeah.
Okay. So the ones where it says reactions, is that considered a hand too?
No, that's just thumbs up, thumbs down, party time.
Okay. So that's what I was using as my hand, was the hand. There's a hand in there?
No.
Okay.
Try the other one.
Okay. I can find my name. All right, I'll find it while you.
On the bottom of participants, when you click it, there will be a white screen.
Oh, I see.
And then on the bottom right-hand side, it says raise hand.
Okay. Got it. Thank you. Sorry about that.
No problem. Gary, please go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I think, obviously there's a number of very important studies that we should look at. I know we had an elaborate discussion at the last Parliament, and we I think had a number of studies that were on the docket. I know that because of COVID, we weren't able to get to them, and I noticed that with the notice of motions, a lot of that has come back. I think what I want to refer, Mr. Clerk, I don't know if you were able to send the notice that I sent this morning, but there is one study that I would like to propose as the first study to be undertaken, and that is with respect to the recovery. And if I may read this, it says that pursuant to Standing Order 1082, the committee undertake a study of the opportunities to support Indigenous communities, businesses, and individuals through a second wave of COVID-19 facilitate Indigenous communities reopening in a safe and responsible manner, build resilience with an equitable and sustainable economic recovery plan. The scope of the study take into consideration First Nation, Inuit, and Métis communities and individuals, including those living off reserve and in urban centers. Health, including mental health supports for Indigenous organizations, businesses, and communities. That the committee also study measures undertaken so far through partnership between Indigenous communities and the Government of Canada, as well as further opportunities for partnership during the COVID-19 pandemic and in the recovery phase. That evidence collected and received through the committee's study on the government's response to the COVID-19 pandemic from the first session of the 43rd Parliament be taken into consideration and used as evidence for the study and subsequent report to the House, that the committee report its findings and recommendations to the House, and that pursuant to Standing Order 109, the committee requests that the government table a comprehensive response to the report. And I'd like to note, Mr. Chair, that this has many of the elements that's outlined in Ms. Berube's motion, her notice of motion that was presented, I think, last week. And as you're well aware, the numbers within Indigenous communities and First Nations particularly is on a significant rise. There's 792 confirmed positive COVID-19 cases, 118 active cases, 64 hospitalizations, and 13 deaths. And we see that basically across the country. In BC, there's 169 cases, Alberta 315, and so on. As a percentage, I think we did relatively well in the first wave, but we are quite worried about the second wave, and I think it'll be prudent for us to look at the government response, but also how we support the businesses and so on that have been affected significantly in an ongoing basis to support Indigenous communities. So I hope this will be the first study that we can undertake, and you know, it will be relatively short because we did do quite a bit of work at the outset, and although there was no report from there, I think a lot of the information that we gathered there can be used to report on this. So we're proposing, you know, between 4 to 6 meetings to be able to undertake this study.
Thanks very much. Does everyone have a copy of that motion? It's quite lengthy, and I had to dig it up myself to keep everything straight. So,
Mr. It was distributed by email not long in advance of the meeting start time.
Okay. So, I think, will we take submissions for further motions now, or shall we discuss that motion?
Point of order, Chair.
Yeah.
I'm just as a newer step-in member, I'm just wondering about the process. I understand in other committees that I've been in that this might be a general conversation, but then it goes to the subcommittee, and the subcommittee comes back with recommendations for the whole committee. So I'm just wondering if that's going to be the process today, and if we're just going to have general discussions, or if we're going to allow the subcommittee to do their work and then vote on that when the subcommittee has done their work.
You're quite right.
Thank you.
It goes, thanks for reminding me. Been away for this for a long time. Okay. So once again, Mr. Batiste, you have a motion that you'd like to bring forward.
Yes, and I do agree with COVID being top of mind in terms of priorities that we need to look at for Indigenous communities across Canada. But one of the most disheartening things that we've been seeing across Canada over the past few months is more heightened acts of racism and discrimination, and it's really disheartening to talk about but I think that it's important. And one of the things that Nelson Mandela once said was, education is the most powerful weapon which you can use to change the world. And that we had talked about treaty commissions in our previous, we met in the previous government with this committee. And I'd like to put back on the table that we really need to look at treaty commissions. There's some great work going on across several provinces on anti-racism by creating awareness and creating the premise that we're all in this together and that we're all treated people. And these are things that are going on in Saskatchewan and Manitoba and Nova Scotia. And so I'd really like to read, introduce a motion that pursuant to Standing Order 108-2 and given evolving roles and responsibilities of treaty commissions across the provinces, that the committee undertake a study on how treaty commissions be utilized to educate and create awareness of Indigenous history and rights in Canada. The new National Treaty Commissioner Office be designed and established with Indigenous partners with the goals of creating rights awareness, supporting reconciliation efforts, and implementing Indigenous rights in Canada. That the witnesses list include representatives from the treaty commissions in Manitoba, British Columbia, and Saskatchewan, rights holders, academics, officials from the Ministry of Crown and Indigenous Relations and Northern Affairs, and that the committee reports its finding to the House. And that's what I think that would be a good starting point for discussion after we talk about COVID. And these are consistent with what's being suggested in the calls to action, both in the missing and murdered Indigenous women's, as well as the TRC calls to action. And I think it's consistent with what our government needs to look at, ensuring that we're taking the proper steps towards reconciliation. So with that, thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Batiste. Ms. Zan, Mr. Pulowski, Vierson, McLeod, Melillo, and Lenore, please go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I want to first of all say thank you to my colleagues. Both of those studies sound really interesting. And at this particular time in our history, I think we're at a tipping point where we need to do more to change the way things have always been and to be able to treat First Nations, Indigenous people, Inuit, and Métis people with more respect, and really get to the bottom of how do we change systemic racism in Canada to make life better for all Indigenous peoples. So on that note, I have a motion that I'd like to make regarding a study, which would be regarding the quality of healthcare for Indigenous peoples and the impacts of systemic racism on access to and quality of that healthcare. So I move that pursuant to Standing Order 108-2, the committee undertake a study of the role of the federal government in ensuring quality access to healthcare for Indigenous peoples in Canada and the impacts of systemic racism on both the access to that healthcare and the quality of that healthcare for First Nations, Inuit, and Métis, and that the committee include the testimony of Indigenous peoples living on reserve, off reserve, and in urban centers, as well as local Indigenous and non-Indigenous health providers, and that the committee take into consideration the testimony of Indigenous physicians and patients, that the committee report its findings and recommendations to the House, and that pursuant to Standing Order 109, that the committee requests that the government table a comprehensive response to the report. And again, just in closing regarding that motion, we've been seeing too much, I think, in the news lately of how our Indigenous people are treated, and sometimes to the point where they are not receiving the proper treatment, and it has ended in death. And I'm sure that some of the ones that have been captured on video are just the tip of the barrel. There are many more, so we need to really do our due diligence and making sure that this practice stops and that we look after everybody. Thank you.
Point of order, Chair, just
Yeah,
a point of order. So I am not totally clear. Right now, of course, there was that sort of ambiguity around notices of motion, can they be received? So, and we're not sort of debating each motion. So I would presume that what we're doing right now is receiving these notices of motion in a formal way. Some that might have been submitted and some perhaps that have not been submitted. Is that accurate? Because of course I know we are not debating a motion. I wasn't sure if those were appropriately received by the committee. So can you perhaps just clarify for me? We're just receiving a number of notices of motion currently.
You correctly figured that out, because we're discussing motions that we'll put on notice, and we will have to deal with each motion as it is moved, and then can't consider another motion until the first motion that has been moved or has been voted on or withdrawn. So I'll continue. I'll let my the speakers go on in the sense of a general discussion on the first gathering of this committee, and then we'll move on to the more substantive matters of moving on motions. Is that okay, Kathy? Does that?
Point of order, Mr. Speaker.
Oh, sorry. I just want to come back to.
So what we're doing right now is we are receiving notice of motions, both ones that the committee's receiving notice of motions, Gary's and the others, and then there will come a time when these motions are not being moved; they're being received.
Right.
Thank
you. That's my expectation of the meeting so far today. And Mrs. Ann, you had a point of order?
No, I just wanted to say that these motions were already distributed. Mine was distributed. Thank you.
Oh, yeah, thanks very much. So we go to Mr. Pawlowski.
Yeah, sorry, I'm just turning my baby's monitor off unless you wanted to hear him crying in the back. Someone else has got him. Don't worry, I'm not a negligent father. Okay, so yeah, we're presenting, I think, a whole list of notions or notices of motion, and there is an order here, as you may see. I agree with COVID being number one. I agree with number two being the treaty commissioner. To add to the list, which I'm sure will be discussed, I have yet another notice of motion, this one regarding food security in the North motion, which I think many of you, especially those of you like Mr. Malilo there, looks after fly-in communities. I like this one. And the motion, notice of motion is that pursuant to Standing Order 1082 and given the high cost of nutritional goods and reduced access to non-perishable goods, including country and traditional foods, and the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic on food supply lines, especially in fly-in remote communities, the committee undertake a study on identifying ways to improve food security in northern and remote communities, and the impact of new and expanded programs introduced during the COVID-19 pandemic. That the witness list include representatives from Indigenous, northern, and remote communities, nutrition experts, officials from relevant departments such as the Crown Indigenous Relations and Northern Affairs and Agriculture and Agri-Food Canada, and that the committee report its finding to the House. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Viersen. Where is Mr. Viersen?
Thanks, Bob. I got to find my mute button back here too. Yeah, I actually have a motion that I'd like to dispose of right off the get-go. It's not so much a notice of motion. In Canada, we've got a robust set of human rights. We're also typically pretty polite people. We get along well with our neighbors. We recognize the value of human life. And so when I seen the videos that come out of Quebec there in regards to Joyce Etchakwan, I was horrified. And many people from northern communities in my riding were sending me the video and were expressing concern about that and saying, Arnold, you're on this committee, you should do something. So I have a motion that I'd like to deal with right away.
Arnold, in view of how we began this, and it could be my fault, I prefer to stay in the context of what we've done so far, rather than get to motions, because that's the way I had sort of established the list of speakers, and I certainly want to hear your motion.
Do you want me to dispose of it at the end, like after we deal with this?
We're going to come back to all of the motions. So,
okay.
My feeling was having just started back after all the COVID break and all of that, I just wanted to hear from all the members of the committee the direction that our motions would be taking. And so that's good. And then we can, at the committee's behest, deal with them however we'd like to. So if you could just put that one on hold for now.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, just don't. I'm sure I'll jump in if you're forgetting about me. So
I know you will.
I'll put it on hold for now. Thanks.
Okay, you don't forget about me, and I won't forget about you. How's that? Okay. Kathy, I'm sorry. Go ahead, please.
So thank you. And I did do a notice of motion again, not being sure if they could be received. But I know that back in March, you had the ministers for the main estimates, but of course those main estimates were not reported to the House. So even though you did your work, it actually didn't complete the work. And of course the main estimates have been sent to us again. And I think it's very imperative that we actually take the time. It's been many, many months since you've heard from the ministers in terms of, and things have changed dramatically. So I think and the reason I put a date that is before they actually have to be reported back to the House, I understand, in November. But look what happened last time, and they didn't get reported back because, of course, in a matter of days, the House was shut down. So I think, to be safe, we, as a matter of priority, let's get the ministers in, let's talk about the estimates, let's get those reported back to the House. I really find it troubling when a committee doesn't meet its deadlines in terms of reporting estimates to the House. So again, I think this should be a priority. It would be, of course, 1 or 2 meetings, and that would be it. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, may I?
Yeah, my understanding is November the 27th is the deadline, but please go ahead, Mr. Gary.
So my understanding, Kathy, is that the ministers, I think, appeared on, if I'm not mistaken, June 13th or thereabouts, and that was reported. That was tabled.
It was never reported.
It was tabled. They were tabled just before prorogation. That was that's my understanding. We can double check, or maybe the clerk could double check. But certainly, I think the ministers look forward to appearing. I think sometimes in November, and we can work that out for the current period. But certainly, I think for the previous timeline that's been. They have appeared and it has been reported back to the House, and we will get you clarification on the dates on that.
My understanding is the deadline is November 27th.
Yep.
So,
Point of order, Mr. Chair.
I'm sorry, go ahead, Gary.
It was my understanding that we weren't debating these, that we were just tabling, or that we were just putting these on the table and we were going to discuss them later. So my question would be, why are we debating them?
That's a good point. Thank you. So we're not going to debate them anymore. We're just going to move along. And Eric, I have you up next.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I did raise my hand a while back, and obviously the discussion has continued. So I just want to be sure. I do have 2 motions that I'd like to table. However, I haven't submitted them already. I just want to know if I'm okay to proceed.
Yes, please.
Thank you. And the first one will be similar to my colleague from Thunder Bay Rainy River, touching on food security, and I'd like to move that pursuant to
this is a notice of motion. Yeah, go ahead.
Yes, yeah. A notice of motion, excuse me. Yeah. That pursuant to Standing Order 1082, that the committee undertake a comprehensive study on food security in Northern Canada, that the scope of the study include, but is not limited to, the structure of Nutrition North Canada, that the witness list include, but is not limited to, Northern retailers, representatives from Northern municipalities, and First Nation, Métis, and Inuit communities receiving the subsidy, the experts in the subject of food security, and that the committee report its findings to the House. And secondly, given the fact that we are meeting virtually, and given that our colleague from Nunavut wasn't able to join us, I'd like to move a very brief notice for a very brief motion. The committee recognizes the immediate need for investment in broadband in Northern Canada to ensure remote communities are not left behind during this pandemic, and that this be reported to the House. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Gary Vidal.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have two notices which were sent out this morning that I would like to include in the discussion today. The first one being around the boil water advisories, which has been an item of great attention in the last few weeks. So I'll just read it for now. That pursuant to Standing Order 1082, the Standing Committee on Indigenous and Northern Development adopt the following motion: that the committee review the process in which ISC identifies, prioritizes, develops a plan to address, and then addresses boil water advisories across Canada, and ways in which this process can be streamlined, and when innovative technologies provided by the private sector could play a role in providing favorable outcomes, and that the committee will invite officials from ISC, the Minister for Indigenous Services, Indigenous community leaders, and industry leaders in innovative methods of water purification, that all meetings for this study be televised, that the committee report its findings and recommendations to the House, and that pursuant to Standing Order 109, the committee requests that the government table a comprehensive response to the report. And my second one is that pursuant to Standing Order 1082, the Standing Committee on Indigenous and Northern Development adopt the following motion: that the committee undertake a study on the implementation of Bill C-92 passed in the 42nd Parliament, focusing on establishing a best practices approach that is Indigenous-led and modeled, and that the committee will invite officials from ISC, representatives from all provincial governments, the Minister for Indigenous Services, relevant stakeholders, and Indigenous community leaders who have already begun and not yet begun the process of assuming jurisdiction of the provision of child and family services, that all meetings for this study be televised, and that the committee report its findings and recommendations to the House, and that pursuant to Standing Order 109, the committee requests that the government table a comprehensive response to the report.
Thank you very much. Well, Madame Bérubé, bienvenue. Qu'est-ce que vous avez?
Ms. Bérubé, welcome. What do you have for us? Yes, I'm going to be tabling my 3 motions that I sent last week. The first one is the following: that pursuant to Standing Order 1082, the Standing Committee resume its study on food safety in northern communities that it undertook during the first session of the 42nd Parliament, and that the testimony heard at the time be taken into account during the current session, and that the committee submit a report. My second motion is the following: that in accordance with Standing Order 1082, that the Standing Committee undertake a study and make recommendations in the form of a report on social services, housing, and clean water provided to Indigenous communities in the context of the COVID-19 epidemic, with a view to undertaking measures to respond to their needs, and that the committee use the testimony and information obtained before the interruption due to COVID. And my third motion, that pursuant to Standing Order 1082, the committee undertake a study pertaining to the rights of the Aboriginal peoples in Canada in order to harmonize the support measures that apply to our Indigenous peoples with the principles flowing from the UN Declaration on the Rights of Aboriginal Peoples, and that the committee make recommendations in the context of a report to be tabled in the House of Commons. As I was saying earlier, I did table these motions last week in accordance with our procedures, and if there are questions, well, I would suggest that we deal with them. The interpreter did her best, but we did not have the text of these motions, which were read very quickly.
We can refer back to the material that Madame Bérubé submitted to us if you missed it in translation. I think things were going fairly quickly for translation to capture everything, but sufficient to get a general understanding. And we have the text of the material as Madame Beyroube has already sent it to us. And so our work now is to determine we've got everything submitted. I don't see, yeah, everyone's been spoken to with regard to motions. And so I'm going to ask the committee how you want to proceed. Now, Mr. Viersen had a motion that he wanted to put forward right now, and I would suggest that we would have to have unanimous consent to entertain a motion now, because what we're doing at this moment is determining the future of our committee, the business that we're going to be doing, and the order of reports. Mr. Pulowski, you have your hand up.
Yeah, I don't know if point of order, but I see the NDP didn't have any motions. Is that because Ms. Kakak couldn't get online anyhow? I don't think that'd be fair to them, the NDP, if they don't get any notices of motion in because of technical problems. But maybe Ms. Blaney could address that. Is that, if that's the case, then I think we ought to consider that and perhaps give her some time to get their notices of motion in.
If I may, Chair.
Please.
There were some challenges there, and we are working that out with her presently. Also, just based on understanding that I had, and we had this conversation, is that the subcommittee, of course, is the one that comes and presents to the whole committee. So my understanding today was that we were going to hear the notice of motions, and then the subcommittee would meet and start prioritizing, which would allow time as well for our normal sitting member to be able to present her motion or motions. And of course, I just want to put in my 10 cents with Mr. Viersen. If this is a study, I would like to hear the motion before I gave consent to see if we could move forward with it.
Right. We are dealing with studies.
Mr. Chair, I also have some study motions that I think I can, like the normal process, can I just submit notice of motion through the electronic means to be considered at the, unfortunately or unfortunately, they're very similar to some of the, particularly Mrs. Zan's. I have one that's very similar to that, so I'm happy to work with her.
So I think then where it seems to be coming down to is with further notices coming from Ms. Kakak and Mr. Viersen, that perhaps we should move this on to the Agenda Review Subcommittee and determine the future work of the committee. I think we'll be here for a long time going over the material that we have, but I'm really pleased that we have heard the direction that our members from all parties are interested in pursuing.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, go ahead.
I would still like to move a motion that we could dispose of today as not a study motion.
Sorry, Your Honor, Mr. Chair, I don't understand what's meant by not a study motion, because I think the way is it a declaration then? Are we as a committee making a declaration? And if that's the case, and I'm not actually sure that we're able to do that. I don't know if the clerk could give us some clarity on it. I don't believe we're able to do that. I think
I do believe that this is committee business section of the meeting where we can dispose of motions.
Well, it sounds substantive and would require 48 hours, wouldn't it?
Mr. Clerk, could you clarify motions on the floor?
Could you? The notices are on the floor, Mr. Clerk. Could you give us any help on that?
Sure. Notices of motion can be submitted either orally by reading it out in committee, or via the clerk according to the routine motions. And for any substantive motion, unanimous consent is required to consider that motion or for that motion to be moved if the 48 hours notice period has not elapsed.
And what's the definition of substantive?
Well, anything is substantive right now because it's all brand new. It's not based on previous discussions that we've been having and sort of nuancing to something. So I would say that
When will our next meeting be? Because that can kind of determine whether I'd like to get this dealt with before the House resumes next week. I don't think that we'll be having another meeting before next week.
Point of order, Chair.
Please go ahead.
Does he not need to sort of move it, and then the decision as per our NDP colleague is whether unanimous consent would be given? Is that not what would need to happen?
Okay, Mr. Viersen, give us.
So my motion would be that the committee extend condolences to the family of Joyce Etquan and express great concern over her treatment, and this be reported to the House. I think given the fact that what we've seen, people have been pushing me for a while saying, when you sit on this committee, we need to get some reaction. What is the committee going to do about this? I think that we can express our great concern, express our condolences. We will be going into studying healthcare impacts and all these kinds of things. What we need to do is express our concern, report this to the House forthwith. I don't think that we should be delaying this out any longer. This is
Let me ask
imminent thing. Thank you.
Let me ask Mr. Anand Sangari for a comment.
Look, I think if that's the actual wording in the motion, I don't think there's a particular issue. My concerns are, threefold really. Like, first off, whether, and I've never had a committee basically declare anything like this, so just clarity on whether we have that ability to do that. Secondly, the nature of the file that we're dealing with, respecting issues around Indigenous people. I think this type of motion could basically be done virtually every other day, given the number of outrageous things that have and continue to take place. So I think we just have to, in terms of precedent, I think we have to be careful in that sense.
Are you saying
I think
every other day?
Mr. Viersen, Mr. Anasangri has the floor.
I think what we should focus on is to come up with a study that reflects the need for action. So I think that's what I think would be a more appropriate response from this committee, to actually do a study to come.
We will be doing that study.
To come back.
We will be doing that study.
If I may just finish, Arnold. It'll be, I think, prudent for us to speak to experts, to come back with some comprehensive response. On
Mr. Viersen and everybody in the committee, crosstalk does not enable us to function well. So, Mr. Anasangri has the floor. Please go ahead.
So I think it'll be appropriate for us to actually work on a study that will come back and report accordingly to Parliament. I think that's the appropriate way this committee should be functioning, and I think that's probably what's called for in respect to the issues that Mr. Viersen's brought up.
Arnold, do you want to comment?
Well, Mr. Chair, this is basically a process thing. Unless I get unanimous consent for this, you're telling me I may not move this motion. So at this point, this is a notice of motion that the committee extend condolences to the family of Joyce Etquan and express great concern over her treatment, and this be reported to the House. And I hope to dispose of this as soon as possible. Thank you, Mr.
Okay. Yeah, thanks for that. Mr. Batiste, did you have your hand up?
Yes, and I think that I think that's a good thing for the community. I think your heart's in the right space. I think the family would much rather hear from you directly, Arnold. And I think that if that is something that committee members individually just speaking from Mi'kmaq culture, to receive something from a committee or a government as a whole won't be as heartfelt as if you take the time and reach out to them yourself. And if you require a phone number, I can get it from Regional Chief Ghislaine Picard, and I think that would be much more appreciated by the family rather than just a general something from a committee that gets voted on. I don't know if that's reconciliation. I think that's something that we can, I think that if we're going to send, our regrets and have a conversation, that should be a conversation that you have with the family. And I would, if you need that help, I would be able to help you get that phone number from the regional chief of Quebec.
I suppose what could be done in terms of the general approach that the way we work this committee is, without regard to motions, if we all wish to send condolences together as a group, based on what Mr. Batista just told us, that might be the way to respond, rather than the regulatory process, which has a kind of a cold edge to it. And then to Mr. Ananda Sangari's point, why didn't we do the one previous, or will we do the one next? Because the weeks don't pass without awful things happening. So we'll leave that as where it is, and perhaps have further discussion on it later on. But as it stands now, my suggestion would be that we will establish the subcommittee for agenda review and bring forward the motions that we've received notice at this point. Does that sound fair? Let me ask Mr. Ananda Sangari, would the government be amenable to that?
Yeah, that's fair, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Any further discussion? Because the way we have it now, we have all of most of the documents. Madame Beyroube, please go ahead. Yeah.
I'd like to say that it doesn't prevent all parties a table of motions later on, as long as mine is debated today. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Clerk, I'm on English, and I only heard the direct statement by Madame Beyroube.
Madame Beyroube.
Ms. Beyroube, can you repeat what you were saying? Once again? You want me to repeat what I've just said? This does not prevent parties from presenting their motions later on, as long as my motions are debated today, Mr. Chair.
You wish to debate your motion today?
Oui, Monsieur le Président.
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Well, I'm at the mercy of the committee.
Well, point of order, Mr. Chair, I asked for clarity in the beginning. The understanding that I have, of course, is the subcommittee does that work and comes back and provides a recommendation to the committee of the whole. That's the normal practice from my understanding. So I feel like this steps out of that normal practice. But of course, this is at the discretion of the committee.
Exactly. So, Mr. Ananda Sangari, no, we'll follow the process has been outlined. We would require unanimous consent to go there, and I'm not seeing it. So, so we'll leave the motions at the notices as they are, and they'll come before the agenda review.
Sorry, Mr. Chair, just quickly.
Yes, go ahead.
I did want to ask, and maybe that was the answer right there, but I just wanted to ask as well. I did have one motion that did not require a study, calling I would say, I mean, maybe I'll read it again, that the committee recognizes the immediate need for investment in broadband in Northern Canada to ensure remote communities are not left behind during this pandemic, and that this be reported to the House. I think that that's something we can all get behind, and I'm just wondering if we'd have unanimous consent to discuss that right now.
Well, it's reflective of our previous conversation, and I'm sure that it will be included in the one of the motions that we have before us with regard to COVID, because I think we need to, at least for the benefit our First Nations, Métis and Inuit people, ensure that we get right down to the business of the obstructions to quality of life that currently exist because of COVID, and that is certainly one of them. So I would suggest that rather than having our committee move endorsements of positions, that we just stick to the business at hand, which is approval of reports and then enlistment of witnesses. So
is it possible that I could ask for unanimous consent on that, or is that your decision?
Well, once again, you've heard the suggestion from Mr. Melillo. So rather than asking for unanimous consent, as the speaker would say, is there anyone who does not wish to approve unanimous consent?
Can I hear the wording again? Because I'm trying to, are we just talking about Northern Indigenous people?
Read it again.
Because I'm from a First Nations community that there's a lot of them that don't have broadband and internet. So that's something that can be expanded to all Indigenous people across Canada who are suffering and don't have the ability to have broadband or internet as well?
Yeah, I would certainly be open to that. I'll just read it again as it is.
Go ahead. Yeah.
That the committee recognizes the need, the immediate need for investment in broadband in Northern Canada to ensure remote communities are not left behind during this pandemic, and that this be reported to the House.
Mr. INAN de Saint-Gris, Mr. Pawlowski, Mr. Batiste.
So, Mr. Chair, I think this is very much in line with my previous intervention. I would like some clarity in respect of committees passing motions like this. I have not been party to these in the previous Parliament, and we've had two motions that have come from the floor that essentially are asking for this committee to take a position on issues. I'm just not sure if this is, I don't have enough parliamentary knowledge on that to say if this is appropriate or not. And I think I'd like to get some clarity from the clerk on this.
Mr. Pawlowski, did you have your hand up?
Yeah, and I agree with both the motions. However, I also agree with Mr. INAN Sangria as to, are we going to be having this with every meeting, that there's similar kind of motions asking us to make some broad statement? Although, yes, maybe we agree upon it. This seems to be a whole new route. I'm not sure that we want to do this, and I'm not sure if this isn't taking away from the functions of the committee, that every committee potentially we can be presented with a whole bunch of similar motions, which we may agree upon, but I'm not sure there's much to be gained into doing this. And I mean, this could take our whole committee, that we could all propose something that we probably all agree on, and let's put a statement up about this, let's put a statement up about that, let's put a statement up about something else. Even though we agree on it, I'm not sure what we gain from that, and I think it's taking away from the function of the committee.
Okay, I have Ms. Blaney, Ms. Zan, and Mr. Batiste, and then I think we should wrap it up. Ms. Blaney?
Well, thank you for this. The first thing that I would like to say is I've heard several times today by several members, our Indigenous communities, our Indigenous people. That's colonial language. I just encourage everybody to think about that, because the people I am belonging to don't belong to Canada. They are their own independent people. The second thing that I'll have to say in relation to this notice of motion, I'm a little confused about it, is there are many communities that I represent that are Indigenous communities and rural remote communities that do not have access to broadband, which has brought forward so many concerns, especially in COVID. So I'm absolutely willing to support this, but also willing to see what the committee decides moving forward. It sounds like it needs unanimous consent, so that might be a barrier. Thank you.
Ms. Zan? Lenore, where are you?
Actually, I didn't have my hand up.
Oh, I'm sorry. Their blue hand was still up from the last time.
Sorry.
Okay.
Sorry.
Mr. Batiste, could you make your comments, please?
Well, I almost have kind of changed my line of thinking since hearing MP Pawlowski, because while I did want to make an amendment and say maybe we should look at rural areas, and then we start getting into, which First Nations in which areas, or are we just looking at Northern? And as a Mi'kmaq person, did I drop the ball by supporting something that didn't also include First Nations in in Canada and rural areas. But then I think to myself, well, you know, if I listen to Pulowski, I think that one of the things that this committee needs to start getting to is the studies and figuring out what is it, those things that we don't all agree on, and how we can move the bar forward a little bit for First Nations, Inuit, and Métis across Canada. And I'm thinking that, you know, what we need to do is, I can understand the importance of all of us putting motions there on things that we agree with, but I would much rather, as what we do as a group, is create studies and create recommendations for government to follow. And it would be my thoughts now that we need to get to those studies, and just having these motions that we put forward and say everyone is supportive. I don't know what that does for my community. I don't know what that does for, you know, the places that are in First Nations that don't have the, you know, good coverage. I mean, so I'm in a sense of saying, let's get to the studies. Let's get to discussing within the subcommittee what we're going to move forward on, and get to the witnesses, because I know we could spend a lot of this day looking at how and what we all are in agreement with, but I don't know what that does in terms of practicality for my First Nations community.
Mr. Vancouver.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I appreciate all the sort of back and forth with respect to the motion. I do agree that it should be a broad one that includes all First Nations, Métis, and Inuit people across Canada. And MP Blaney, point very well taken. Language is important, and colonial language certainly has no place in Canada, let alone on the INAN committee. Mr. Viersen, I appreciate the sentiment, and I would move that we agree to extend condolences just upon, you know, a simple review of the language to make sure that it's amenable for all parties and people. But I think it would be a kind gesture and appropriate for this committee to extend. And I think the motion with respect to broadband is a good one as well. Just have to make sure that it's inclusive.
So I'm going to ask the clerk, we'll have an offline conversation about the mandate of the committee. No one disagrees with the feelings that were expressed in Mr. Viersen's comments. Perhaps at the end, what's your point of order?
Well, just as far as I know, we already have unanimous consent to be discussing Mr. Melillo's motion. Mr. Melillo's motion is the one that's on the floor right now. I'm very much in support of Mr. Melillo's motion, and I would like to dispose of that motion by having a vote.
Well, I'm not in favor of actually doing any motions as the chair right now, because our meeting has been going along very well in terms of the actual work. I'm sorry.
We had a call for.
I have the chair, Mr. Viersen. I have the floor right now. So, and please, let's not get into crosstalk, okay? You made a comment, and I'm replying to the comment, and my comment as the chair is, can we get down to the business of the mandated procedures that are in front of us, and with regard to the very substantive motions that have been given notice today. The other matters, I think we'll take an offline discussion as to how we want to proceed, or if we want to proceed with regard to other comments or the feelings of the committee and so on, because really that is endless. That there's no end to that. And that's fine. Everything that comes up, we all consider when we open the paper or watch TV in the morning. Things fall on us. But are we delaying what we are mandated to do by going off on tangents? And so I'm going to ask that we hold this conversation off. We'll take a look at the mandate and then come up with an approach at our next meeting. I really don't want to get into unanimous consent.
Point of order, Mr.
Point
Chair.
of order? Yeah, go ahead.
This is about the management of the meeting. I understood that you asked for unanimous consent from this committee to hear Mr. Melillo's motion. You said, is there unanimous consent? I'm going to wait for a no. Nobody said no.
Okay.
Then the discussion.
Not unanimous consent. No.
The discussion ensued. You gave the floor to Mr. Nangasangri. He discussed Mr. Melillo's motion. right? We are de facto discussing Mr. Melillo's motion.
Yeah, we
had
really got
unanimous
off
consent.
track. Yeah,
We
yeah,
had unanimous consent. We started discussing Mr. Melillo's motion. We went through several speakers on Mr. Melillo's motion. I would expect at some point that we would be disposing of that motion. That is typically how, no, that's not typically, that is how motions are dealt with this committee. So I would ask that we dispose of this motion by having a vote. If I am wrong, I look to the clerk to clarify that a little bit.
do we have, okay, thank you. Do we have unanimous consent?
We did have
and I'm
unanimous.
seeing a no. No, I'm seeing a no. So there's no unanimous consent. So for the purposes,
Mr. Chair, I distinctly remember you asking, "Is there unanimous consent?" If everyone say no, you can review the tape of this. Nobody said no, and then we started discussing. We can't go back now and say, oh, "Is there unanimous? Is there still unanimous consent?" That's not how this works.
There was unanimous consent given to discuss it, and then we discussed it.
yeah, we didn't
that
deal with the
confusing?
motion.
The motion is still on the floor.
Okay, the motion is on the floor. Do we have unanimous consent? What's your point of order, Mr. Pawlowski?
Why just say there was never unanimous consent? I mean, I didn't hear there was unanimous consent to deal with.
It was clearly asked.
Okay, I'm going to have to stop this discussion now because we've gone way off track. We don't have unanimous consent.
What are we doing with Mr. Melillo's motion now? We've been discussing it. We need to do something with it.
Well, we're not going to do anything with it because we don't have unanimous consent.
So, point of order, and again,
yes, Ms. McLeod.
Thank you, Chair, for acknowledging when you do committee business. Can you re-clarify? I understood any motion. I mean, we agreed to look at the studies and move the studies that were suggested as a notice of motion to committee. And now we're looking at actually committee motions, which, as I understand, I mean, number one, being as we're in committee business, don't necessarily need unanimous consent. But second of all, I do express some confusion also because I understood we had not proceeded with Arnold's, but that you had asked the question in terms of unanimous consent, even though I'm not sure we need it, and that we had proceeded with the other motion, which is not about study, it's just about an expression of the committee's thoughts on something.
Okay, so to be very honest, there's nothing that we disagree with. What we're discussing right now is how the business of the Indigenous and Northern Affairs Committee is going to move forward, and whether other elements such as reflections on incidents that are arising call for comment from the committee. And so perhaps I could get an overview from the clerk on the direction that we're headed, because I'm at the hands of the committee and the mandate of the committee. So, Mr. Clerk, do you have any suggestions for us?
My understanding of the general direction of the discussion was that motions regarding future business were going to be referred to the subcommittee for consideration and prioritization. And the committee was discussing whether it should be all of these motions or whether they wanted to consider some today. But as of yet, there are some that have been given oral notice and others that we've received electronically. And we're in the middle of that future business discussion right now.
So my preference would be that we move to the subcommittee with everything that's before us, because once again, I haven't stated that I don't wish to do this sort of business. It just seems to me, as has been stated by others, is not something that we've done before. And it's not a horrid precedent, but I just want to make sure that we're moving within the accepted procedures of the committee and of PROC, and that we simply move on to the agenda review subcommittee and deal with
Mr. Chair,
yeah.
One of the things about a committee being in control of its own destiny, so to speak, is that we have the ability to move motions. and that we
Yes.
have the ability to pass those motions. And if you're
Right.
going to just run roughshod over that ability of my colleague, Mr. Melillo, to you ask for unanimous consent, we move the motion appropriately. We are in committee business. As far as I know, I don't have the book in front of me, it's back in Ottawa, but as far as I know, when we are in committee business, we can move motions on the floor. We don't need 48 hours notice. We don't need unanimous consent. We can just move it on. Right? So in my case, I did not have 48 hours notice, and you put that up as a roadblock. Fine. I walked away from it. Mr. Melillo gave his 48. Before the committee was even constituted, because this is the constitution meeting, before this committee was even constituted, he put his on notice. Now he is moving it on the floor. You asked for unanimous consent. We got unanimous consent. We then moved into discussion. That then demands that the motion be disposed of. Now, if you want somebody to move a motion to table this motion so that we can discuss it at a later date, happy to do that. I think it should be disposed of right now, and I will be voting in that direction, and I will be voting to support Mr. Melillo's motion.
Okay, now,
but that is a matter of this committee being in control of its own destiny. When there is a motion on the table or on the floor, we can either table it for another discussion at another later date, or we can dispose of it with an up-down vote. I am in favor of disposing it with an up-down vote at this point, but I would ask for that vote to happen forthwith.
Okay, now I'm pleased to do that. And I would say, Mr. Viersen, that when you speak about people running roughshod, I have never run roughshod over a committee in my life, in all of the committees that I've chaired as mayor and so on. This is a discussion about how the business of the committee is moving forward. And so I would appreciate leaving the emotional language out and just discussing what's before us. And in a moment, I'm going to put the question of Mr. Melillo to the committee. Mr. Pulowski, you have the floor.
Well, I just think if there's agreement, there has to be unanimous consent to entertain the motion. I did not give consent to entertain this motion, and I think if we're going to have that kind of vote, then it has to be pretty clear that everybody's nodding or agreeing. And certainly I didn't hear that, and so I did not give consent to hear this motion.
Ms. Blaney, did you have your hand up?
I did, Chair, and thank you for this robust discussion. I just want to say that I'm not trying to be contrary in any way, but I do agree with Mr. Viersen on this. I thought that we were actually moving towards giving consent, because when you did ask, does anyone disagree, nobody said anything, and then it moved to conversation. So I thought I was confused.
On Mr. Viersen's motion or Mr. Melillo's motion?
Mr. Melillo.
Mr. Melillo.
So
just wanted to share what I saw, and hopefully we can get to a place on this.
Okay, so let's get to it right now. In view of my understanding that and Mr. Pulowski, I'm sorry if I missed that, but I believe we have unanimous consent to allow a vote to take place on Mr. Melillo's. Would you just repeat the motion once again, Mr. Melillo, and then we'll go to the committee.
Absolutely. That the committee recognizes the immediate need for investment in broadband in Northern Canada to ensure remote communities are not left behind during this pandemic, and this be reported to the House.
All right. And so all those, Mr. Van Couverden, you wish to speak to the motion?
I would, when we're sitting in the same room, we can often edit these together and come to, an agreement on the wording. And this being extraordinary in terms of the circumstances, we're sitting in presumably 8 different provinces and territories right now. I think an opportunity to expand on Mr. Melillo's motion is prudent. I don't want to vote it down, quite frankly. I think it's worth exploring. But to Mr. Baptiste's point, his community is Indigenous and not Northern, but does also experience issues with broadband, as do communities very close to my riding in the Six Nations. So I think it's a good motion that requires an edit from all of our members so that it suits everybody's issues.
Okay, so to that point, perhaps we can go offline with the motion, have it tabled, and then on our next meeting, have an amendment discussion. So that, because it sounds to me like there's some positive consideration, but maybe the edit is required, and certainly the around the table format works much better for that than what we have here, the Hollywood Squares format. So Mr. Melillo, would you consider tabling the motion?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I'm certainly not opposed to that. I'm wondering if my colleagues in the committee would be interested in just adding that wording now, if possible. We could add rural communities, Indigenous communities, and really broaden the scope of it. I'm not opposed to that as well, if we want to just make the change now and get it done with.
Well,
I think there's a lot of agreement on what those amendments.
It won't be that much. It won't be. I'm sorry. It won't be that much longer for this matter to move forward, if that's the committee's wish. If we take the time to take it up as the first item of the new meeting, the next meeting, because I think we need to have some. I know you'd forwarded the material, but my feeling is that we could find a solid agreement to move forward with a bit of discussion offline, because we've spent some time on this, and I just wonder if we could get to if we could table it to the next meeting and bring it up as the first item. As a chair, I'd like that, but that's up to you. If you agree with that, we'll do it. If you wish to consider hearing amendments, then we can do that too.
Well, I'm just wondering if what the thoughts are of my colleagues. I think we could add broadband in Northern Canada, Indigenous communities, rural and remote communities, and I think add that amendment now. I'm not sure if there's anyone who's looking for anything different in terms of broadening the scope. And if we want to have that discussion, then obviously we can table it for the next meeting. But from the sounds of it, to me, I think we're all sort of on the same page of how we can amend it.
I think we're close, but once again, you never want to move something that is faulty, because then you're stuck with what you said. Mr. Poloski, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Well, there is something else you could add, and I think a lot of people recognize that there's also economic barriers to internet access. So, for example, urban Indigenous people often don't have access because they don't have money for internet or a computer. So that isn't in there, and that's kind of a problem with these kind of broad statements, is that there's maybe always things that could be changed, and maybe I think better left to next week, in my opinion.
So I'm going to suggest that, Mr. Melillo, if you don't.
I'm in agreement to that, Mr. Chair. Just we can table that to the next meeting, and maybe just add in general, I think that these types of motions, although not launching studies, not necessarily as substantive as some of the others, I do think that they are important to show where there is some agreement in the committee, and to bring that forward to the government and to all Canadians. I just wanted to make that point on the record, but absolutely agree with your decision. Thank you.
Thank you, and I want to assure you that in the spirit of the mandate of Indigenous and Northern Affairs, that we're all working toward positive outcomes for the people that we're representing, and so we'll leave it at that. And I'll ask if there's any other business that we need to consider at this moment. If not, Mr. Clerk, do you have anything more that I've skipped over?
I think just to recap the decisions that I'll have recorded for this meeting, that with the exception of the motion of Mr. Melillo, that all others are going to be referred to the subcommittee for consideration and prioritization, and that the first item of business for the next meeting be the motion moved in the name of Mr. Melillo.
Everyone satisfied with that? Well, thank you very much.
Just a quick clarification. It's the next regular meeting for the motion, not the subcommittee meeting.
No, the regular meeting. We'll go right to it at the regular meeting.
Thank you.
That's correct.
Well, thank you all. And Mr. Clerk, thank you for joining us, the Brave New World. We have serious issues to confront on this committee, And I appreciate everyone's concern and candor. So thank you very much. And we'll see you à la prochaine.
See you next time.